Guys, it's Manga time once again. I'm here today to bring you my review of Bleach 661, My Last Words. Cool chapter title. I don't think it necessarily just means what Uryu says in the chapter. There could be a more sordid undertone to the chapter title, because I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit here, but we know that all the kind of main kind of hero group part ways in this chapter, and Chad kind of gives Ichigo his thumbs up, which, if you've been reading for as long as we have, we know that kind of is Chad's like, leave it to me, don't worry about me face. But what if, and we know that when Chad does that, no words are needed, but what if the thumbs up is Chad's last words to Ichigo? I'm just saying, maybe Chad's gonna die. Or maybe I'm reading way too into it. But, hey, what are reviews for if not speculation, am I right? But seriously, I do think the chapter title was very cool. It's quite foreboding, and it would be very Kubo for it to have a second layer to it. So let me know in the comments below what you think about the chapter title this week. Does it literally just refer to what Uryu says to Ichigo, or maybe is there a sinister second meaning? Guys, before we begin, please hit the subscribe button up here. I'd super appreciate the support. That'd just be so great. It'd be really cool to just kind of get the subscribers up a little bit higher. But I super appreciate everyone who comes in here every week. Also, a lot of you guys were pointing out last week that it was a suicidal mission that Uryu was on, and I'm not going to lie, that completely went over my head when I read the chapter for the most part. I kind of just thought he was being melodramatic about the whole, only I can do this, it's only going to be me. So the fact that it's a suicide mission does make that situation a little bit more interesting. And it also does kind of, it does kind of reinforce why he didn't tell anyone he was going. So yeah, that makes a bit more sense. Anyway, this week starts off with Haschwalth emerging very sinisterly from the shadows, and it does look very, very sinister. It must be like almost pitch black down there, because he appears from what looks to be a wall of shadows. So that's definitely interesting. Uryu's like, get out of here, I'll hold him off. Make way for the Sun Gate. Which is interesting because Uryu is still at the moment planning on blowing the place up. He then says, hurry, get out of here. If you go, you can still make it. And then Haschwalth's like, did I not make myself clear? I've seen how you will respond. I've already destroyed the sun gates connecting us to the real world, which is pretty cool. So Haschwalth has already seen that Uryu is going to help them get away, so he's smashed the place up, basically, so they can't get away. Which leads me to think something. Haschwalth gains the Almighty after he defeats Basby. And at that point he says something along the lines of, being able to see into the future is a very cruel power, isn't it, Your Majesty, or something like that. So was that referring to the fact that he at that moment foresaw that Uryu was going to betray them? Or is that quote something even further ahead, something to do with Yhwach, which is why he specifically mentions him? I'm not 100% certain, but one can imagine that after that fight with Basby was then when Haschwalth started putting all this into motion, when he went and destroyed the Sun Gate, etc., etc. This also leads me to question, how is this invasion of the real world going to still take place? Because it's interesting. That was a very throwaway comment by Uryu last week, but it's pretty much the one thing that everyone, all of us have seemed to picked up on. But maybe it was just meant to be a throwaway comment. I'm not certain. It looks like the Haschwalth has attempted to isolate Varvelt in order to make it, the final place of battle, so no one can get away. So yeah, I'm interested to see if the Living World fight still continues, because there's a lot of characters unaccounted for. Isshin, Ryuken, Tessai, basically the entirety of the Karakura lot are all kind of missing in action. So yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of seeing if that actually means anything. Anyway, Haschwalth then says, I'm going to end this ruse before His Majesty awakens. And it looks like he's controlling the shadows, but I don't think he actually is. I think it's just meant to be a dynamic panel, because nothing ever happens of this again. But it's really weird because he's walking forwards. Presumably, they're inside Varvelt, so it's just interesting that he's like, he does this kind of dynamic pose, and all of a sudden there's like a random burst of wind that starts sending his hair and his clothes flying, just making him look more badass. But yeah, anyway, Ichigo's like, looks like we have no choice to fight Ishida, and I did think we might get our 2v1, but we don't. In typical Bleach fashion, we don't. It is nice, and I think Kubo's done this incredibly well, Ishida's change of demeanor. Now, some people might think, oh, it's a bit quick, that Ishida's suddenly gone from being... Because every time we saw Ishida, when he was pretending to be a Sternritter, he looked incredibly downtrodden, incredibly depressed. Now he's back to his normal self. He's thinking, he's assessing the situation, he's analysing. And I don't think it's too quick a change, because one has to remember that Ishida was never evil. Therefore, he's just been waiting to kind of be like this again. But he says, wait, before His Majesty awakens. So Ishida's realised that right now, Haschwalth has Yhwach's eyes, meaning Yhwach doesn't have them, meaning Yhwach is vulnerable. So basically, Ishida says, you need to go to Yhwach. He's currently in the topmost point of Varville. Go to him. And so Ichigo's like, you mean you intend on staying here? And then we get a very nice picture where Uryu's like, relax. I have no intention of making these mundane words be my last. And it's very cool because, Ishida he's smiling again. He's got a strong look in his eyes, and it's a very good use of show, don't tell. This is how Ishida is meant to be, how he wants to be, and Ichigo kind of looks, he's like, and then he smiles because he's like, oh yeah, you are back in the right place now. I can probably leave Haschwalth to you, and he and Orihime and Chad, haul ass out of there. So then Uryu's like, you're not going after them. You sure that's all right not to chase them down? And then Haschwalth's like, I've told you, I see everything. They will perish. There is no need to pursue them. I think this is interesting. And it kind of calls back to my comment about Chad at the very beginning of the video. Haschwalth's eyes, are they telling the truth? Can he see literally everything in the future? Because it was called into question last week whether or not Haschwalth's almighty powers were quite as good as Yhwach's. And even Yhwach has blind spots. Like I predicted, he can't see the movements of the Soul King. So I don't know if Haschwalth's powers are absolute or not. So are they actually going to... Is this foreshadowing a death amongst the character group? Or is Haschwalth just wrong? It's hard to say when you're dealing with the absolute power of foresight, because really Haschwalth shouldn't be wrong. Although what Uryu says in the next page is interesting, because he says, so be it. But, that which we call fate can be changed, can it not? And it's interesting because this sort of is the opposite of what Yhwach said to Ichigo when they met atop the Soul King Palace, and Yhwach said, you will be crushed on the gears of fate, implying that Yhwach had seen everything that was going to happen and Ichigo wasn't going to win. But Uryu, and Haschwalth clearly abides by that as well, but Uryu believes that, destiny can be changed. It's not this fixed line that Yhwach and Haschwalth see. So basically Uryu is saying, your powers, I wouldn't put all of your faith into them. And Haschwalth, looking super sinister, is like, you're surprising me. You're a completely different person than you were a minute ago. You're under the delusion that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I don't know if Haschwalth's being literal when he says you surprise me, because if he has the power of foresight, he shouldn't be getting surprised. So if Uryu's acting in a way he didn't expect, then is that a clue to the fact that Haschwalth's power isn't completely working? I don't know. It's a bit of a mindfuck. But anyway, Uryu, I think it's Uryu, or it's Haschwalth, says we'll have to... Actually, I think it's Uryu, says we'll have to see if there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Then we get another really good page of close-up faces, where Uryu looks pretty awesome, actually. And he says, that look of shock I saw on your face when you saw me means you haven't seen this version of me, and that's all the glimmer of hope I need. So Uryu basically saying, Haschwalth, you've never seen me as I actually am. You've only seen the downtrodden, depressed Sternritter Uryu. You've not seen the Uryu who defeated opponents in the past, and this is also again a clue to the fact that Haschwalth's power might not be everything he's kind of got it up to be, because basically Uryu saying you never saw this coming. So Haschwalth is looking a little bit angry, and then Uryu then basically calls Haschwalth out and says it looks like the powers of omniscience and omnipotence have yet to be fully grasped by you. So basically Uryu is literally calling Haschwalth out, saying you don't know how to use these yet. So it interests me that is it a case of you get the eyes and then you can see, or you have to learn to use them? I'm not entirely sure. as with most other things in this arc, there is explanation needed. However, we then get a very, very cool page. I really like this page where Haschwalth just literally just draws his blade. No mercy. Uryu has his bow and he's about to fire as well, I think. And then their eyes are like crazy because they're about to fight each other. And unfortunately, it cuts away because I tell you what, I think we're all very hyped for this fight. Haschwalth and Uryu have always had a testy relationship, and we're finally going to see that come to a head. I'm really hoping this is kind of the first big, shall we say, Ichigo caliber fight of the arc, because there hasn't really been one yet. You know, like your Ichigo versus Byakuya, your Ichigo versus Ulquiorra sort of battle. I'm really hoping Haschwalth versus Uryu is that kind of a fight. Long, emotional, just really, really well done. And yeah, I'm super, super hyped to see where it goes. I could almost see Haschwalth getting the upper hand on Uryu and then Uryu's Ryuken showing up. I don't know how he'd show up, but it'd be cool if he did. But there's a couple of things I want to just point out about this fight first. For starters, I've seen a lot of people in the forums saying, I don't know how much of a chance Uryu's got because Haschwalth's got the power of the Almighty. Well, I think this chapter has tried to tell us that the Almighty is not all it's cracked up to be, in Haschwalth's case anyway. It would be cool if Haschwalth was trying to fight the battle, seeing a future that kept changing. And so Uryu kept surprising him. But there's also a couple of other things as well. And we have to take into account what happened earlier in this arc, although how much of it is still going to apply is another thing. We know that Yhwach had Uryu drink his blood and therefore gave him the Shrift of A. We don't know what A means yet. I imagine we'll find out both A and B in this fight. And Yhwach was like, you will see this power, the power this man has in the battles to come. We never did, which makes me wonder how legitimate that phrase still is. But Uryu must be packing some heat for Yhwach, unless Yhwach was stringing him along. But surely Uryu would realise that. So I think Uryu must have... And apparently Uryu has something that can block out Yhwach's Ausschwalen. So there's still a lot of explanation needed in regards to Uryu. I think he's going to hold his own perfectly fine, actually. I think he's going to be perfectly fine against Haschwalth. There's something else I want to point out as well. This is pure speculation, but if you think back to the two opponents that Uryu has actually defeated, I'm not including Miyuri here, because Miyuri, he escaped. He got the kind of he got the kind of Pyrrhic victory, or is it? Yeah, victory in the fact that he escaped essentially unharmed when he turned into the blob. He just had to reform himself. But Uryu, he left for dead because he poisoned him, and it was only because of Nemu. The actual enemies that Uryu defeated were Jirobo Ikanzaka and Saruchi Thunderwitch. Both of those enemies Uryu didn't kill. He shot them through the heart. Well, he shot them through the, oh, wow. I completely forgot what it's called. He shot them through the source of their power, and stripped them of their powers. We know from Haschwalth's flashback that Haschwalth started out without any Quincy powers, back when he seemed like a genuine decent guy. So it'd be very interesting if Uryu won this fight by doing his typical thing and removing Haschwalth's powers from him, thus returning Haschwalth to his original powerless state. And it'd be possible then that Haschwalth might be able to start to see a bit clearer again, because there's undeniable that now that he's got the Almighty, he's gone a bit crazy. But anyway, we move away from that fight, unfortunately, and Ichigo and the others are all dashing up the stairs. Very cool title page. Ichigo's big shadow leaving behind my last words. Looks awesome. Very cool. I love when Kubo gets creative with the title pages. And they're rushing up the stairs, and basically they're headed for the summit. And we get a nice little character moment now where Orihime starts crying, and Ichigo's like, "Oh, are you okay, Inoue?" And she's like, "Yeah, actually, I'm actually really good because I feel quite relieved that." And she's like, I never really... I think this part here is that Orihime is supposed to be echoing our thoughts. She says, it's not like I ever really believed Ishida had actually gone over to the Quincy side, but having finally heard it straight from the horse's mouth, it's just a huge relief. So I do think that's supposed to be her echoing our thoughts, because let's be honest, none of us ever thought that Ishida was actually evil, and I think Kuba did that on purpose. And so she's like, I'm just relieved that Ishida was the Ishida we always had known. As they're running, however, they suddenly get attacked by these absolutely massive and really weird looking statues. um, yeah, they are super weird looking. They don't have faces. Instead, they have like crowns with a Quincy cross hanging off the front. The designs are definitely cool and unlike anything we've ever really seen in Bleach before. Ichigo grabs Orihime and they dive out of the way as these two statues come crashing down. And basically, what this is just super weird. Like, I want to know what the deal with these statues is. You know, what are their designs based on? Are they something from the Shinigami Royal Realm that was just slightly changed, or are they completely based off a Quincy history? Either way, they keep trying to attack Ichigo, but Chad smashes through one of their swords with very little difficulty. And there's just a massive explosion because loads of these friggin' statues are now attacking them. And so Chad's like, I've got this, just go. And Chad gives Ichigo the thumbs up, you know, the bromance, the typical way that Chad does things, which, again, like I said, I think it could be a death flag that Chad is like, just leave it to me. However, this has happened loads of times before in Bleach as well, where Chad has been like, just leave it to me, and he has been sort of fine. But I do think it's funny because what I think must be going through Ichigo's head is when Chad's got this, when Chad's like, I've got this, it's fine. Ichigo must be thinking, look, every time we've left you on your own, you have been the first one of us to be defeated. It happened in Soul Society and it happened in Hueco and Ichigo's probably like, I hope I'm not running down a corridor 20 chapters from now, and then suddenly I'm like, oh no, it's Chad. Has he been killed? You know, in typical way. I don't think that's going to happen this time. But it's basically Kubo's way of giving Chad something to do. Again, a bit weird that Chad supposedly has trained up, both in the execution arc in Yukio's chamber and in Hueco, and yet we're going to see the fruits of that training against random statues. Seems a bit weird to me, but then there aren't many enemies left anyway. So Ichigo continues on, clearly not bothered, not worried about Chad. And then Chad actually gets a little bit of badass at the end of this chapter. I'm not going to lie. He's like, you know, who wants to play with me first? And then I really didn't expect this. Friggin' Ganju comes out of the ground, and he's like, you know, he uses Seppa to come blasting out of the ground and turns it into sand. And we get a little bit of a comedy moment between Chad and Ganju, where Ganju has like this massive spiel about, you know, these statues are going to be, they're no match for me. They're going to face the wrath of my Seppa. But Chad's like, you know, look, Ganju, we just need to keep it simple, right? And he's like, you know, Ichigo has his goal in mind. He is just going to go straight to the boss, and that's it. And so our job also needs to be very simple. Destroy everything in this castle, top to bottom, and prepare the way back for him. And I'm not going to lie, that final panel is really cool. Chad looks like a freaking badass putting that arm on. And then, you know, Ganju looks alright. Ganju's like ripped to hell now. He's like super buff. Which is funny because he still has done nothing. But yeah, I think it's very cool that, you know, Chad's just walking forwards, his arm is generating, and just in the face of these massive weird Quincy statues. I don't think we're likely to see more of that. At least not for a little while. But who knows? Now, I want to point something out before I move on. It feels like, because lately we have had a lot of setup. Askin and Yoruichi has been set up, but not taken any further. Gerard versus basically everyone, not taken any further. Haschwalth and Uryu, and now Chad and the statues and Ichigo running away. Oh, and Lil Barrow landing in Soul Society and meeting Kira. And I think there's definitely a reason for this. It's not just Kubo being completely random, and I think what he's basically doing is setting up the Battle of Varvelt Round 2. If I had to compare it to another part in the series, I would say it's most akin to when the Vizards show up in Fate Karakura Town. So the first set of battles ends, then there's an interlude. There is an interlude of like 3 or 4 chapters where the Vizards all show up. They have their little banter with the Soul Society. Fura sends out the Menos Grande. They do all that bit of fighting. Shinji tries to kill Aizen. All that kind of stuff happens, and then the fights continue with Baragon and Hachi, and etc., etc. And so I think that's what's happening here. This is the interlude moment, where everyone is moving into a new place. Ichigo has moved on from Askin and has been replaced by Yoruichi. Gerard has activated the miracle. Lil is now down below. So I think now we're going to start Varvelt round 2. We'll get the long fight between Askin and Yoruichi. We'll get the long fight between Gerard and the rest of Soul Society. We'll get the long fight between Uryu and Haschwalth, which will probably be the last part of this second part, I think. Which will also culminate with Ichigo meeting Yhwach. As for what will happen when Ichigo meets Yhwach, I suspect that Ichigo will have the upper hand for a little while. He probably will Bankai, and then at the last second Yhwach will get the Almighty back and probably defeat him. But I can't be certain. Anyway, I did like this chapter. I thought the character interactions were really nice. On the flip side, basically nothing happened. Now, the first bit with Uryu was really good. The first half was really good. It was exciting. It was tense. And I literally can't wait for that fight. The bit with Ichigo and Chad and Orihime, though, really nothing happened. They literally ran up a few stairs, a couple of statues attacked them, and then Chad stayed behind. But, I thought it was a better chapter than last week, because I thought the progression was clearer. I thought the characters were better, they were handled better. And I got some very old school vibes from like when Ichigo and Uryu have their kind of unspoken trust in each other, and then Chad gives the thumbs up and Orihime is all sad. Very, very typical, and I liked it a lot. And I thought it was well done. So I'm going to probably give the chapter a 3.5 out of 5, slightly higher than last week. Just hope now that the interlude section starts to end pretty soon and we get closure on all the fights that are happening. And we actually start to get some answers, because we really need some answers. But yeah, I really like the chapter. What did you guys think of it? Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this week's chapter of Bleach. Yeah, not much to say. How much are you looking forward to the fight with Haschwalth, for example? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget, guys, to hit subscribe. And also, if you really like PlayStation, check out my free PlayStation-focused podcast Platinum. Platinumed in the description below. I'd super appreciate it. You can just go check it out on SoundCloud. Maybe give us a follow or leave a comment. Either way, I'd super appreciate it. Until next time, there, guys. See you later.